afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 10th installment of our Philippine Indigenous Languages Lecture Series, or PILS, for the year 2025. This year-long series of public lectures was organized in solidarity with the International Decade of Indigenous Languages between 2022 until 2032, as declared by UNESCO, or the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, and the week-long celebration of the founding of the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy, or Linggo ng KAPP 2025. I am Vinci Santiago, your moderator for today. This event is being recorded, and the video will be posted on the official YouTube channel of the UP Department of Linguistics. We will have an open forum at the end of this lecture. We request that you keep your queries concise, to the point, and respectful. If you want to post any pictures of the event or any of your insights and additional thoughts on social media, please use the hashtag UPLingPils with double G sa Linggo ng KAPP 2025, KAPP, and Pananaw at Pagtanaw. That's the official theme of CSSP Week this year. I am pleased to welcome today our speaker, Professor Aldrin P, PhD. Dr. Lee's work focuses on grammatical description, morphosyntactic analysis, generative grammar, ethnolinguistics, linguistic fieldwork and language documentation, lexicography, Korean linguistics, and cultural studies. He is also my thesis advisor. Today, he will speak about the island language Cuyonon and its specialized lexicon for the Intertidal zone, from TUBÓG, tide pool, to ATÓL, stone tidal Weir. Let us give Dr. Lee a round of applause.
Thank you, Vinci, for the introduction. And thank you everyone for coming to my talk today. The title of my talk is Cuyonon Lexicon for the Intertidal Zone, from TUBÓG, which is tide pool, to ATÓL, or the stone tidal Weir in Cuyo Islands. So allow me to start by sharing you a little bit about my experience in the island. So I'm going to read a Cuyonon text, but there's English translation right beside the Cuyonon text. Okay. Bilang isang bata, ngagbal sa kapupuruan, apupunwa kang kabuy, sa adlaw-adlaw, iperming pagpakibagat sa dagat. Manggadun akong pangadlaw-adlaw nga limot. Sa mga termino nga kapakita, iyang madalong na tapidan, iyang lukta, iyang dagat. Ikong pangarasan mo kagud, akabog ka sa isarang purwanan nga parimanahon sa tulad siyang klase nga palibot. Bagan mambong ang adlaw kung hindi ako kalusad, para mag-serve man, pag madalawang dagat, o magpanaw-panaw sa enasán. Ang isa rin makabubarog sa akong islang inalinan, ang isla iyang Cuyo, ang durong kating enasán na makikita sa pagtitingan iyang baybay, ang luwa iyang bakulód. Durong kabal ang balor iyang enasán para masiguro ang pagkaon sa puro. Tungatiga reistar ang ibang klase ng mga tanong igayok sa dagat nga pwede ka ng makakaroon. Para sa mga may lingtod na may pangisda, durong ka importante ang enasán. Tunadigi sanda kasandig para sanda makakaroon, sandang pangitang pamduang-duang sa inanaw. That's the end of my Cuyonon narrative. So almost all marine shorelines would probably have an intertidal zone. Probably everyone here has been to a beach in the Philippines, so I assume mayroon kayo nakita ang intertidal zone at least once in your lives. This is the area where the land meets the sea, and where we could visibly see the change from the low tide to high tide and vice versa. However, for smaller islands like Cuyo, the intertidal zone that normally surrounds the entire island is not just a marine ecosystem. It is an important boundary marker, a gauge for the tidal range. So doon mo malalaman kung pakati na ba o palalim yung dagat. And a buffer zone that protects the landmass from deep sea. So ibig sabihin, if you're in Cuyo Island, you go out, pumunta ka sa beach, you can walk ng malayo pa, hindi pa malalim agad. Hindi kantilado yung dagat. So this explains why the intertidal system, when I say intertidal system, that includes both the intertidal ecosystem, the zone, and the human activities carried out in the zone, significantly contributes to the linguistic system of the languages or the language spoken in the island. In my plenary paper at the 31st annual meeting of the Southeast Asian Linguistics Society in 2022, I argued for the pursuit of island linguistics in the Philippines, the need to account for this linguistic system unique to small island environments, and to develop language elicitation materials appropriate for island languages. And I'd like to thank Vinci, the one who introduced me earlier, my advisee, because he was the one who actually sent me a paper about island languages around 6 years ago before the pandemic. So at that moment, I realized that, it's actually possible to create a descriptive framework for languages spoken in smaller islands. And my talk this afternoon, titled The Cuyonon Lexicon for the Intertidal Zone, again from TUBÓG to ATÓL, extends my initial work on island linguistics and aims to expand the baseline lexicon for the intertidal system, from the different terms used to distinguish the different areas within the intertidal zone, up to the terms referring to human activities carried out in this ecosystem. The lexical investigation would highlight significant ontological distinction. So the distinction, for example, between a TUBÓG, which is a tide tool, and for example, a tidal flat, we call that one bagumbón, and relevant conceptual systems. So enasán, the intertidal zone, is actually a very complex conceptual system. And also bakulód, for instance, which is our term for the fringing coral reef system at the edge of the intertidal zone, is also another complex conceptual system. So the documentation would also include communal strategies and cultural practices associated with this whole range of intertidal pursuits. One such communal practice is the building or restoration of ATÓL. That's our term for stone tidal weir. It's a traditional fish trap made by stacking rocks or reef limestones to form a structure that looks like a dam or a fortress. While stone tidal weirs have been long attested in different parts of the world, including some areas in the Philippines, there's a study by Ma'am Ching Sayas in Panay Island in 2019. My investigation seeks to provide a novel description of the stone tidal weir using an indigenous ontological frame. I believe there's no available description yet about the ATÓL of the Kuyo Islands. This work would zero in on Cuyonon, that's my first language, as I have, shared my positionality to you earlier. Cuyonon is the island language spoken primarily in Cuyo Islands, but probably if you've been to Palawan, to Puerto Princesa, you probably have heard Cuyonon as well, or maybe saw a signage bearing Cuyonon text. The Cuyonon is the same language from where we based the initial data for posting island languages of the Philippines in 2022, but we have included some other island languages like Puromano being investigated by Vinci. And also we have included Cagayanan, spoken in Cagayan Island in Palawan, Bolinao, spoken in Pangasinan, and I think that's it, right? Did we miss anything? Yeah. Batayan, Cuyonon, Bolinao, yes, and Cagayan, yes. But since intertidal system is a K domain in Island Linguistics, a more comprehensive lexicon for the intertidal zone, could serve as additional eliciting material or baseline documentation tool for probing island languages in the Philippines. We've drafted an initial island language questionnaire in 2022, but this is missing a lot of details in terms of the different domains. The lexicon could also be extended to languages that distinguish coastal from inland varieties. So it does not only cover island languages, but it could be applied to any speech variety that is spoken along the coastline with intertidal system, like Pangasinan, for example, and people Catanduanes. Chester's here, so I hope that he will explore the island environment of Bicol Catanduanes. To a broader extent, this study contributes to scholarship that foregrounds local epistemologies and the role of indigenous languages in articulating traditional knowledge systems. That ends the introduction. Now let me go to the next part. I wrote here, ta, malusad kita. That's our expression. We would like to say, shall we go to the shoreline? So let's talk about the intertidal zone. One of the most important properties of the intertidal zone is the fact that it goes through different states depending on the tidal range. So island languages, including Cuyonon, would normally have distinct terms for both low tide and high tide. Cuyonon, however, has additional terms for ebb tide. We call that unas. So unas is actually ebb tide. That refers to the period when the tide is receding. And also we have a term for neap tide. That's the tide just after the first or third quarters of the moon, when there is at least when there is least difference. So the difference is actually not noticeable between high and low water. We call that aral in Cuyonon. So those are the four terms for tidal rains in Cuyonon. Tao for high tide, unas for ebb tide, kati for low tide, and aral for neap tide. As you will see in the next part of our talk, as you will hear in the next part of our talk, these events are extremely important to an intertidal fishing community, since the type of fishing activities that could be carried out in the intertidal zone depends upon the tidal range. It is, I think, noteworthy to share that the Cuyonon tao and probably the other cognates in Philippine languages are reflexes of the Proto-Austronesian reconstructed form tao, also, which means high tide. And there's a reconstructed Proto-Western Malay Polynesian, kati. But there's no reconstructed form that I've seen for the other languages. Unless our historical English friends here have some data. Okay, now let's take a look at the different terms used in Cuyonon to refer to the different sub-areas close to and within the intertidal zone. So if you go to the intertidal zone in Cuyo Island or in any other island of the same environment, you will notice that the zone actually changes its characteristic from the area close to the shoreline up to the edge of the intertidal zone just before the water goes really deep. So let's start from the farthest edge of the intertidal zone. So the farthest edge of the intertidal zone, we call it bakulód, and it's the boundary that separates the intertidal zone from the subtidal zone in the deep sea. Bakulód is a fringing coral reef system. So you will find probably the same words in other languages, like in Abutaynon they call it kalatukan, in Cagayanan they call it pagangan, in Puroocan kagasangan. This is home to enormous variety of coral fish. So I think if you go to the market, palengke, seafood or fish market, and you see really colorful fish, probably those fish would have come from the bakulód area of the intertidal zone. Also, you will find crustaceans, so lobsters are normally in this part of the intertidal zone, large mollusks, and other sea animals. Bakulód marks the area right before the cantil or the subtidal zone. If you are a Cuyonon and you're told that, cantil dyan, that means it's dangerous. That's a sudden change in the depth of the seawater. So cantil is dangerous since besides being way deeper than the intertidal zone, the tidal current is stronger, so it could be difficult to swim or paddle back to the safe area, especially during windy days. So spear fishermen or those who are using paddle boats are normally advised not to go beyond bakulód. Okay. There are two terms. So the next area just behind bakulód, going closer to the shoreline, there are two terms that refer to this low intertidal zone. One is kakulapuan, that's a derived noun from another noun, kulabo, which is a sea grass. So in kakulapuan, of course, it is marked by the dominant presence of kulabo, Sargassum crestaifolia. This aquatic plant is strongly attached to rocky substrates in the semi-exposed portion of the coral reef. A popular intertidal fish called busalo. I don't know a picture of busalo. I don't know. Yeah, that one. On top. That's busalo. Leptoscarus vigiensis. Is highly associated with this area. So if you want to catch a lot of busalo, you have to get to this area. Also, large sea anemones are normally found in this area as well. Another area that shares the same location as Kakulapuan, the same level, is called Napgas. Napgas is characterized by coral rubble. It's mainly composed of small rocks, dead corals, and skeletons of small animals. You will find the same term, for example, in Abutayan, they call it sibi. In Poromanon Langatan. Napgas may look like an ossuary, like a dead zone, but there are specific sea animals that thrive here, particularly kogita, that's our term for octopus, and also tabangka. This is a black blotched jawfish that you will see there. So it actually hides in, their kind of home in the Napgas area. Now let's go to the middle part of the intertidal zone. So the mid-intertidal zone is characterized by the highly vegetated area we call enasán. So enasán is like the default term that we use for the entire intertidal zone, but it's also used specifically to the vegetated area in the mid-intertidal zone. Enasán is again, it's the cover term, and the term we use for the zone with aquatic vegetation or small rocks, and it's normally differentiated or distinguished from bagumbón, which is the term that we use for the intertidal sub-area that are mainly sand or sandbars with surface during low tide. So this is bagumbón. While fishing could technically be undertaken in both enasán and bagumbón, low tide fishing is normally carried out in enasán because of course, there are more sea animals or sea creatures that could be caught from enasán. While bagumbón is normally the area where leisure swimming is done and where boats could be safely anchored. So this area, you swim there safely, and this is also where we normally anchor the pump boats. Now, okay, so the split between enasán and bagumbón is also observed in other island languages. So Agham Panlipunan has pula and bagumbón also. Bolinao has karang and buyangin. Cagayanan has blumbun and inasán. And Poromanon has hunasan and bunbun. Okay, now let's talk about the common seagrasses in the Cuyo Islands, enasán, intertidal zone, which is highly vegetated. The most common seagrass in enasán is called baryaw-baryaw. It's actually a term for date seagrass in Halus aquaroides. Baryaw-baryaw, it's also a metaphor because baryaw-baryaw is usually easily swayed by seawater. So if you are a bayo-bayao, you know what kind of person you are, right? So I think in Tagalog it's balimbing, no? Hello, balimbing. So see the difference between the way we actually metaphorize things. In the island, we use a lot of metaphors using sea creatures. Here, please. Sorry about that. Now there are, so Bayo is not edible, but it's home to, of course, an enormous species of intertidal fish and a lot of different other sea creatures. There are these 3 edible seaweeds that Cuyonons collect in the enasán. So I think you know lato or aquatic, I think in the north. It's our term for sea grapes, color Panlipunan. And we also have pakut. I have difficulties looking for pakut photos, but I assume it's a kind of sea moss. And tambalang, I think you know tambalang is the karajinan or the like kind of the one that's made into gelatin, right? So these are the 3 most common seagrasses or edible seaweeds that Cuyonons would collect in the enasán. Aside from intertidal fishes and seashells, the enasán is also home to other edible seafoods like buli-buli. A picture of buli-buli there. Yeah. Buli is our term for anus. So, because you know, this is a sea anemone that when you see it on the sand, it actually really looks like an anus, right? So, it's a favorite delicacy in the island. And also there's this noodle-like looking extremes of lumot or sea hare. We call it itlog yang lumot. That one. This one is actually normally green when you collect it. And we mixed it in salad, in a kind of salad, with a type of sea cucumber, right? Sea cucumber and maybe some additional shellfish, fresh shellfish. I think Brian asked me about this a few days ago. That's the one. And you will see that lumot. So it's kind of cruel because you know when you are when you want to. My mom loves lumot. This one, itlog yang lumot, but also she likes the liver of the lumot itself. So the characteristic of lumot is that even if you remove the liver, it will survive for some reason. Okay, so my mom would normally just cut the belly of lumot, take the liver, and then just fry it because it will survive definitely. Amazing. Amazing liver power. I mean, better than humans. Aside from, okay, so those are some of the things that we can see in the enasán. Now let me talk about the next level of the intertidal zone, which is a little bit closer to the shoreline, just before the beach rock cluster. After the enasán and before the shoreline, before the beach rocks, there's a tide pool that is normally present. Tide pool, we call it generally TUBÓG. This is the area in the intertidal zone that keeps a certain amount of seawater during low tide. In Agham, they also call it TUBÓG. In Cagayan, Tubugan. In Puruhan, Limao. Cuyonon subclassifies this tide pool into one that is relatively bigger and has a garden-like ecosystem filled with seagrass or small rocks. We call it TUBÓG. And one that is smaller and sandier called Limao. When we were kids, we loved to play in Limao. But if you are a low-tide fisherman, then you would probably go to TUBÓG to find edible intertidal fishes and other sea animals. The last area in the intertidal zone is normally a cluster of beach rocks right along the shoreline. We call it kabatuan. Kabatuan is derived now also from bato, Kabatuan. The rocks here are classified as Bantiki. And if you do further ethno-linguistic investigation, you know that Bantiki as a rock is has some other function in the Cuyonon life. It is used in curing pasma. So I remember when I was a child, and whenever I would have pasma, it's like influenza, pasma. Okay, it's like our local version of influenza, and there are different ways to actually cure it. And one way would be boiling. If your mom doesn't know the cause of your pasma, the default cure or heal for pasma would be pamasma using bantigi rock, and it would be boiled, and you would be forced to drink the liquid with after boiling the bantigi, and it's the worst tasting liquid ever. I tell you, I can still remember the taste. Sorry, Nanay. And the rocks, so the rock clusters serve as habitat for specific types of shellfish, like talaba, of course, talaba, and sea. We have this sea. It's pronounced as sea. I think it's the easiest to collect. If you don't have food, you just go to Kabatuan and just grab, some sea and boil it. And also, Sitinirita undata, the scientific name. And several varieties of intertidal fish, like alimusan. It's a gray eel catfish. There's also alimusan in the deep sea, but for us, alimusan is more associated more with the Kabatuan. But Gugugan, Malupalo, also the Padapa. I think in other areas, the Padapa in Ilocano it's called Puno. In Hiligaynon, Pia. Also in Tagalog, I think Pia. In Weir it's called Paro. Gobius crinigen. It's a popular small fish in the Kabatuan or the high intertidal zone. Just a bit of story. Kabatuan, sorry, but this might, for people who are sensitive, but like there were periods in time in the island when some families actually their toilet is the Kabatuan. Okay, so they don't have like toilets at home, but they use Kabatuan. And so we normally do not like fish that are caught in Kabatuan unless we are sure that the area is safe, that it's not being used as a toilet. And I remember my sister Evelyn, Nandilin. I remember because there was a time when she was eating, I think, alimusan. And for some reason, there's still like poop stuck in the mouth of alimusan. I also vividly remember eating a crab that actually still tastes like poop. Yeah, so those are the dark side of the Kabatuan. And if you're from our community, you know who among your community members use Kabatuan as toilet. And it's not a source of shame. I don't remember, I know two of our neighbors who are using Kabatuan as a toilet, and it has never been a source of shame for them. Yeah. It's natural, very sustainable. Okay. Now, so here in this table, you will see the summary of the Cuyonon terms for intertidal sub-areas. So again, as a review, from the farthest edge of the intertidal zone, of course, there's subtidal zone beyond the intertidal zone, but there's bakulód, the fringing coral reef system. Sometimes we call bakulód as kagusuan. Kagusuan is a derived term from the noun buso. Buso is our term for the sharp corals. So kagusuan is another term for bakulód. And kakulapuan next. Along kakulapuan is napgas, and then enasán and bagumbón, and then TUBÓG and limaw, and then the beach rock clusters would be Kabatuan. So probably you'll ask, okay, after Kabatuan, is it possible is this still part of the intertidal system? Technically, the shoreline, probably the sand area is still could be part of the intertidal system because the seawater still reaches that, and there are still like edible seafood that can be collected from the sand in the beach, in the shoreline. I don't know if you know halaan. Halaan is a type of shellfish, and in Cuyonon we have this small version of halaan. We call it agitis, and we collect it in the sand area along the beach. And it is very popular because lactating mothers normally are fed with boiled tagitis. Right. So the beach sand is very important to us. Right, now, okay, so that's the intertidal zone. Now let me talk about the activities in the intertidal zone. So I wrote there, mapakinas kita. That means let's go and do pakinas. Pakinas is our general term for low tide fishing. So the presence of do you remember these terms? I mentioned in my talk, in my first Cuyonon narrative, the verb lusad. So lusad is the verb that we use when you are going to the shoreline from the land. But we also have takas, which is going back from the sea to land. And also we have laud. Laud is the verb that we use when someone is going to the deep sea. Okay? So just to let you know some of the other terms that we have investigated before in Island Linguistics. So the presence of resource-abundant intertidal zone, in Cuyo Island, forms basis for the existence of lexicalized forms related to the activities in this zone. Cuyonon, where is the... Okay. Cuyonon has a general term for daytime low tide fishing. Again, we call it pakinas. And the term for high tide fishing within the intertidal zone may vary depending on the method used and or tidal range when the activity is carried out. So for instance, we have the term uyuri. It's difficult to pronounce, uyuri, but it's actually the term we use for walking or staying in the intertidal zone when the sea level is around the waistline. So, and you can do a number of fishing activities while you are doing uyuri. Okay, you have pabilang Pilar and tuparo and many others. And also we have, so uyuri is different from uso. So my brother consultant, when he said that, in uyuri you cannot swim, because if you swim, that's not uyuri anymore. Swimming in Cuyonon is uso, that's our term for swimming. Of course, there are fishing activities that can be done when you are swimming or diving through the waters. One is panilador, that's using spear. So spear fishing is normally done while you are swimming. Okay. Another important distinction in Cuyonon is between daytime and nighttime low tide fishing. So as mentioned above, the term for low tide fishing is pakinas, but at night, low tide fishing is called panulog, since we're using a lamp or sulog that's necessary for nighttime fishing. While both terms pertain to low tide fishing, there are specific sea animals that can only be caught at night. These are called surulon. Okay? Literally, to be lit by lamp. One specific surulon is a variety of octopus. My brother told me that it's red octopus, so I have to confirm that one yet. In addition, panalubang, from the noun salubang. Salubang is a huge spear. Is a popular fishing activity using a long spear. It's only carried out at night during high tide and around the new moon phase. So when you are doing high tide fishing. It's difficult to do it when there's moonlight because the sea animals would be wandering around quickly, so it would be hard to catch them. The communal fishing activities in the intertidal zone. So there are communal fishing activities in the intertidal zone that normally happen when a community member announces that they will do either panlamnag or pamakisla. Both could be thought of, it's like poisoning the fish, but actually the goal of these activities is not really to kill the sea animals, but rather to stun them. So it will be easier for you to catch them. And also, both are using organic materials. So after the change of tide, then the poison should vanish. But as far as I know, these are not prohibited in the island. I'm not so sure, I have to confirm. But panlamnag is using the root of a fish poison vine, Deris elliptica, to stun the fish in a limited area. Like TUBÓG. TUBÓG is a limited area earlier, the tide pool. So you can actually do panlamnag there. Another one is pamakasla. It's a type of pakinas that uses a fish stunner. So makasla is that tree at the right side. You're using the seeds of this tree, the dried seeds of makasla, and ground it and mix it with some other organic materials and use it as makasla. We call it pamakasla. When a fishing net is hurled during high tide, the fish net owner may elicit the help of the community to push the fish closer to the net. Because if you're hurling the net in a wide area, the fish, they know if there's a net. So they will just stay still and they will not move around. So the fish net owner would normally call the other community members to come and help in distracting the fish and pushing them to actually move closer to the net. This is called tambag in Cuyonon. Do I have it there? Oh, I wasn't able to include tambag or panambag in Cuyonon. So it's another communal practice. But anyway, tambag or panambag could actually use makasla also, just to make the fish feel a little dizzy, or panlamnag as well. In addition, we have very specific terms for catching fish and other sea animals, as well as collecting shellfish, that are also common in these island languages. In Cuyonon, for example, mata, which is also eyes, is also a verb that we use for spotting certain sea animals, particularly crab and borrowing shellfish, what do you call that? A bakalan or bagasay. So it's a kind of knowledge that's passed on to us to actually read the sand if there's crab hiding or a specific type of shellfish. So if you're an expert manigmata, just by the shape in the sand, you could tell what type of shellfish it is. Also, there's a specific verb for catching fish using bare hands. It's called gum. Okay. So gum is used in catching busalog. Earlier, I showed to you the busalog in Nakakulapuan. Use gum to actually grab the busalog. Gum is used in human context, but it's like kind of, how do you call that? You could be charged for sexual lasciviousness if you do that, But there was a time in the island that those practices are kind of like being, passively accepted by the community. I haven't experienced it though, so no worries. Gum is used for male only, right? Gum. And lukad is the verb that we use to refer to the act of extracting some borrowing sea creatures from the sand, like the famous batunan. So the sea cucumber that we mixed with the noodle-like X rings of lumot. That one is called patunan. Sea cucumber, holotuya arinicula. And the adjective maldak, when you say maldak, it means elusive, but it's normally used to describe a situation when the fish is hard to catch, usually during daytime or when the moon is bright at night. So we say, maldak is that. So you don't use maldak for humans, for example. Okay, and finally, right, and the lexicon also includes different terms for Cuyonon shellfish, but I will not include that anymore here in the slide because I think this list has to be expanded, different types of shellfish. But yeah, we have bakalan, I mentioned earlier. We have ranga-ranga, the spider shell, Lambis scorpius, and when you are collecting shellfish, you just need your hand, right? You don't need any other instruments. Just go to the sea and collect it. We call it pamutay. Putay is to pick up. And one of the most popular sea creatures that we putay in the sea is tiri or sea urchin. It's really easy. So there are times in the year when it's sea urchin season. You just go to the sea and you will see a lot of sea urchin. And also sea cucumber, balat. Our general term for sea cucumber is balat, but we have different terms for every species of the sea cucumber. Okay, that's our enasán. Now let me go to the ATÓL. Mapahon kita sa ATÓLan. So let's go to the stone tidal Weir of Cuyo Island. So in Cuyo Islands, there is an ingenious but slowly diminishing practice of building stone tidal Weir. We call it ATÓL. I think it's an apparent descendant of the Proto-Austronesian atur for stone wall. At the tip of the intertidal zone, you will find ATÓL, right before the bakulód. So it's really far. It's normally far from the shoreline. The purpose of that is that the ATÓL is supposed to catch fish that are not found in the intertidal zone. So really big fish, or maybe huge squids, varieties of squids coming from the deep sea that would, enjoy the katulan. And so they would stay there during high tide. And when the low tide, the water will remain in the ATÓL and the fish will be trapped there. So the fort-like stone tidal Weir culminates in a pool-like center, we call it bunwan, where seawater is significantly retained, even during low tide. So that's the bunwan, or the main fish rock of the ATÓL. I would like to just acknowledge that all photos and including videos of the ATÓL in Cuyo Island were taken by Manong Ronald Palay. I commissioned him to actually take the photos, but I also, we agreed that I'm going to recognize him in all platforms that I'm going to share the photos of the ATÓL. So, bunwan is used to attract fishes and other aquatic animals that would normally not stay in the intertidal zone during low tide, thus ensuring an easy catch for the ATÓL owner. So when I was a kid, I would really enjoy going to the bunwan, the center of the ATÓL, but of course, because you're not the ATÓL owner, you're not allowed to touch the fish inside there. You are allowed, however, to fish alongside the other parts of the ATÓL. So ATÓL has many sustainable purposes, including an abundant source of seafood, especially during low tide fishing at night. Again, at night, you can go along the ATÓL, the katulan, and you will find different types of edible sea animals. Also, ATÓL is the first indicator of low tide. So when we are excited to swim, we go to the beach and we see that, may ATÓL pa. That means it's still kind of low tide because you could still see the ATÓL in the surface. And also, it's our barrier against strong wave. So I remember when the Katulan were nicely maintained by the owners. I could still remember that the ecosystem at the intertidal zone was really, really vigorous. Like you could see that the corals are healthy, the seaweeds are healthy, and there are lots of TUBÓG and limaw around. However, so it could be a cluster like this one. That's a cluster of atoll we call Katulan. The practice, however, is unfortunately fading due to the tedious effort needed to maintain it, because you need to go to the sea every day to actually make sure that any rock that has fallen should be like put back in place. And the disinterest, of course, among the younger generation. The younger generation is not interested to maintain it anymore. So allow me to show you a short video of ATÓL, just to let you experience, at least the visuals of this stone tidal Weir of Cuyo. Alright, so as I mentioned in the introduction, stone tidal weirs have long been attested in different parts of the world, including some areas in the Philippines. As I mentioned, Panay Island atolls were first discussed by Monks Chin Zayas. There's an ongoing UN-funded project that focuses on the traditional ecological knowledge that has been accumulated by indigenous people when using traditional fish traps, primarily the stone tidal weirs, and how this knowledge and the fishing practices can be used to assist in the sustainability and conservation of the marine ecology. The project is led by Professor Akifumi Iwabuchi of the Tokyo University of Marine Science and Technology, and Dr. Cynthia Zayas is actually part of the team. I wish that Mom Jim could have been here, but I promised her, she messaged me, I promised her that I will send her a copy of my presentation after my talk this afternoon. Okay, so what I presented today is an attempt to demonstrate how a specific ecosystem so entrenched upon the life of the human inhabitants could shape the lexicon of the language spoken by the community. If only guided by an appropriate documentation tool, we could see the vast knowledge systems embedded in these languages, and how such knowledge systems could have been sustainably employed and passed on by the community for many generations now. Through this work, and probably other work in the future, I wanted to show that scientists from different disciplines should actually be working together if we wish to save, what we have. Linguists will not be able to stop the language from dying if the natural ecosystem that have shaped and enrich the language's lexicon has already died. And if the culture continues to evolve towards a less diverse, singularized, globalized culture, so if you go to Cuyo Island now, if you talk to young people, their aspirations will probably be the same aspirations as the young people in the urban areas in Metro Manila. So if that trend continues, then the younger generation will hardly find interest in the uniqueness that their home ecosystems could offer. If they are not inspired to live, or at least to nurture, the indigenous culture that have been forged in their hometowns, they will also not make time to explore what they have, to acquire the knowledge that their ancestors have passed on. Soon, no one will remember these terms, hopefully not. But the Cuyonon lexicon for the Intertidal system will probably reduce to some historical list, and no one will care to rediscover how sustainable and useful stone tidal weirs are in ecosystems like ours. The study has so much limitation, but I hope that I was able to provide some baseline data that other scholars can use to undertake similar investigations. I am happy that a few young scholars, Vinci, Brian, many others, are showing interest in the study of our islands, particularly our island languages. There are published field guides on different types of living beings found in intertidal zones. These are published as references mainly for marine scientists and aquaculturists. I think it will be good if we could check these field guides and see how we could integrate these existing surveys into our eliciting materials. If you will check the field guides, you will see that a few items would have some local terms, but a lot of them, I know that they do exist, but the local terms are not accounted or documented. So I think the linguist's role is to come in and make sure that we get to make the survey more inclusive. And finally, to my beloved hometown, Cuyo Island. I miss you a lot. I've not been home for 10 years. I'm sorry for not being able to do so much for you. I'm sorry. But I hope that my work would somehow encourage a lot of young Cuyonon to put some attention, draw the attention of young Cuyonon to study our language, to study our culture, and to make sure that the knowledge systems that are actually sustainable would still live and be passed on to the next generation. Thank you so much. Maraming salamat.
Salamat, Sir Aldrin, and I really appreciated the very comprehensive presentation that Dr. Lee was able to provide for us kahit na tayo ay nandito sa Quezon City, Metro Manila. Natuwa ko dun sa footage na pinakita galing courtesy of Mr. Palay. Parang gumamit siya ng drone. Kasi paano niya nakuha yung ganung mga footage. And aside from those observations, I think Sir Aldrin was able to take us from a lexical investigation to a more ethno-linguistic and even decolonial direction because of his emphasis on local and indigenous epistemologies in approaching the study of languages spoken on islands. The particular frames of mind, the particular cultural characteristics and environmental features that we will see in small island communities like Cuyo. Okay, we have a lot of time for questions and comments. We have 2 microphones on either side of the room. Anyone would like to go first?
Mayad nga po kanatantanan.
Mayad nga po.
Mayad nga po, Sir Aldrin. Ako po ay si May Fernandez Legaspi, and just like Sir Aldrin, I was born and raised in Cuyo, but eventually we went to Puerto Princesa City, and now I'm with the Commission on Higher Education. And it's just an affirmation that how proud we are of Sir Aldrin's work and his contributions to the preservation of the Cuyonon language. So, matamang salamat because in this generation, the younger generation, it's only Dr. Lee who has given us the opportunity to let Cuyonon be part of the global community. So, thank you so much for making us proud as Cuyonons. And while listening to you, I was telling my son, who is an anthropology student here, sabi ko, kung buhay si Lola mo, she will really enjoy this because my parents were the first generation Cuyonons who also had the passion for preserving our culture. And they were also born and raised in Cuyo, they were teachers. And part of that, while listening to you, I was being brought to the compositions of my parents, yung mga kanta nilang Cuyonon, particularly yung Manig Pangisda, describing the lives of the fisher folks and mentioning also the ones that you did. I'm just thinking, Dr. Lee, probably I've invited you in the future because in Palawan State University, they have what we call Palawan Studies as one general education course required for all the courses offered in Palawan State University. And I would really make sure that you will be invited to talk about these things because ito na po yung mga talagang hindi nakilala ng current generation. And I was able to go to Cuyo last July and because I was part of the commencement exercises. And when I talked to the younger generation of Cuyo, hindi na po sila masyado nagsasalita ng Cuyonon. Meron ng may awkwardness na parang when you talk to them in Cuyonon, they will respond in Filipino, Tagalog, na may accent ng Cuyonon. Alam niyo yun, yung mga hindi, because we keep to interchange, but sadly, that's what is happening already. But we're very lucky that we have you there to make sure that our language, our dialect, our Cuyonon language and culture will not be forgotten because of your works and your the way you bring this out to the world. Matamang salamat, Dr. Aldrin.
Maraming salamat, Ma'am May. Maraming salamat sa pagpakon. I know how busy you are with Chet. Ikakatinig ko makita ka sa dawan sa. Aram mo na naming kurang-kurang mo si Nay Fe. Okay, for the information of everyone, si Nay Fe Tria Fernandez is the foremost well-known Cuyonon composer, musician. I've known her when I was an undergraduate student. I read the songs she composed and I made a paper for a cultural history class. And many songs have been composed by her. Many Cuyonon folk songs were composed by Nay Fe Tria Fernandez. Hindi matilisan ang valor ng buhat para sa Cuyonon culture. So I'm really honored na nakita ko si Ma'am May today. And also, I think tama that the language shift, if you go actually anywhere in the Philippines, hindi lang naman sa Cuyo Island, but anywhere in the Philippines na akala natin the local languages there are vibrantly used and vigorously used in the community. If you go there, marami ng mga bata na shift is really faster on the ground. So, unless pumunta tayo, fieldwork tayo, hindi natin ma-realize. So, katulad ko, tagal ko nang hindi nakauwi sa Cuyo. So, ngayon ko lang nalaman na gano'n na pala yung extent, no, ng language shift sa urban, sa lansangan, no, sa town proper. So this is not an isolated kind of phenomenon. It is happening all around the country, and there are patterns that actually allow that to happen. So, and I was actually hoping that the islandness could be like kind of a barrier, doon sa shift na yun. But because media, of course, is accessible to almost everyone now, definitely merong factor. At yun nga, yung aspirations ng mga tao, because we are quickly globalizing, and yung tendency natin to lean towards that singular aspiration, yun yung kasi wala nang mga batang gustong maging mangingisda, wala nang mga batang gustong magsaka, di ba? Wala nang mga bata na gustong mangarap doon sa bayan nila. Doon sa bayan nila. Ang gusto nila lumabas ng isla at pumunta ng Manila because everyone is obsessed with this or modern, urban, capitalized dream, of being in the city. So it's really sad, and I'm happy that there's an anthropologist who could actually study Cuyo and Cuyo Islands, so I hope to talk to you later. Matama sa naman.
Any other questions or comments from the audience?
Ay, naunahan ka.
Pilar.
Hello. Thank you so much for your presentation and Cuyonon. My question is, nakita ko po kasi doon sa presentation niyo po sa video, yung mga commercial vessels po. I was wondering po tungkol po sa economic struggle ng mga taga-Cuyo, especially po na meron tayong mga na marami po mga isla, especially doon sa mas malayo sa may laod, pero yung as compared po dun sa ecosystem po dun sa kabatuan. And I was wondering, ano po yung nagiging effect po sa ecosystem as a whole ng commercial vessels? Kasi currently po kasi may campaign na 15 kilometro to secure yung fishing sa municipal waters sa 15 kilometers para secure na hindi mangisda dun yung mga commercial vessels. And I was wondering kung dun po sa mismong informants po ninyo, yung sinabi niyo po yung kapatid niyo po, meron po silang mga nasabi na nababawasan yung huli nila or yung catch nila dahil po dun sa mga commercial vessels. So, opposed po dun sa mga nakukuha nila or nahuli nila dun sa kabatuan na hindi masyadong affected itong economic struggle between the commercial and the local na mga fisherfolk.
What's your name? Jay. Matamang salamat, Jay, for your question. Kung nakaka-apekto ba, definitely yes. Actually, historical na yan. Dalawang klase ng commercial fishermen, yung sobrang nakaka-apekto sa mga subsistence fishermen. One is yung mga gumagamit ng destructive fishing methods like kuskus and dinamita. Cyanide fishing. So, kitang-kita yun ng mga malipakinas. Alam nila pag namuti na yung coral or yung mga sea urchin ay parang namuti na lang, nakalbo na lang, nalagas na lang. Then that's a sign to them na parang may nag-cyanide fishing na naman dito. Right? Isa yun. Pangalawa, yung mga commercial fishing vessels sa malalaki, corporations, fishing corporations. And for many years, actually decades, parang pinapalampas lang ito ng mga Cuyonon. Kasi I think for a long period of time, many locals sa Cuyo ay sobrang naging dependent sa isang fishing corporation that is owned by a prominent family in the town proper, na prominent politicians din sa bayan. So yes, I'm talking about you, mga lim, mga tan, your corporation. That is RBL Fishing Corporation, Rabelin, na sa matagal na panahon, yung mga fishing vessels nila nakakadaan sa isla. I remember, there were instances na kapag may bagyo o masama yung panahon, meron silang mga fishing vessel na talagang na stuck sa mga coral reef and really destructive. I could vividly remember, isang core memory ko ay yung parang haling gabi, lahat kami nasa baybayin pa kasi parang naging spectacle yung paghila ng isang na-stuck na nasira nilang fishing vessel sa bakulód area, sa luang bakulód. Because the subtidal zone, even though it's deep for humans to swim, it's still not very deep. So, mayroong mga bahura, our term for shoal is bahura. mayroong bahura na kapag dyan napunta yung fishing vessel nila, pwedeng ma-stop at marami pang coral ecosystem doon na pwedeng masira ng mga fishing vessels nila. Kaya dapat hindi sila dyan lumalapit. But for many decades, wala, parang nababaliwala kasi sila yung may control sa bayan. And if anyone complains, baka, yung employment mo sa RBL, Fishing Corporation, or maybe Frabel, I think there's also Frabel, I'm not so sure. The owner of Frabel can confirm that. But these are corporations na nag-employ ng mga Cuyonon sa kanilang kumpanya. Cuyonon males. Marami sa mga younger Cuyonon, we call them piscador. Piscador is technically fisherman, pero piscador ang tawag namin kapag employed sila dito sa malalaking fishing corporation. So kapag piscador ka, parang ano yun eh, it's your way to climb the socio-economic ladder. Kasi medyo regular ang sweldo, malaking sweldo, nakakabali na kasi yung mga tindahan sila sa bayan. I know that very well because my father was an employee of this corporation. And he was friends to one of the family members. So alam ko yung nangyayari. And to answer your question, yes, I'm not so sure about now. I don't know. The current mayor, Andoy Ong, he's part of the family, so Andoy, I hope you could watch this video and take note that we are watching. I am watching. And I hope na hindi na mangyayari yung ganito, na sobrang nakakalapit yung mga commercial fishing vessels sa island kasi it destroys the ecosystem. And also, it actually kind of oppresses the local fisherman kasi wala na. Kasi sa kanila, malalaking huli nila, di ba? Tuloy-tuloy na ng isda yung hinuhuli nila. So imagine yung pwede pang mahuli ng mga subsistence fishermen na lumalabas sa laut, maniglaw. Ang tawag namin sa mga fishermen that go beyond the intertidal zone, mga maniglaw. So kapag sobrang nakuha yung mga isda ng commercial fishing vessels, yun, pwede maka-apekto talaga yun directly. So that's a problem, and I hope yung panukala ngayon na 15 kilometro para sa municipal waters na completely should not be entered by these commercial fishing vessels. I hope it becomes a law and I hope it gets strongly implemented. Kasi alam ko may mga batas naman na eh. Pero tingnan nyo, dahil sa isla, there's a political family na may-ari ng fishing corporation, kaya they just get away with it. Right? So we must call them out. Thank you.
Yes, another question or comment? Panagutin ang dapat panagutin dyan.
Wala, hindi sila maging accountable, di ba? Kasi kung may accountability sila, dapat inaamin nila yung mga pagkakamali nila in the past. But no, I've never heard them do that.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chester. Thank you, Sir Aldrin, for that very interesting presentation. Sobrang rich ng kultura sa Cuyo as it is reflected in the rich terminologies that the island has about the water ecosystem. My question is, have you also explored whether there's a distinction in terminologies between creatures found in saltwater and seawater, saltwater and freshwater? I ask this because in Catanduanes, it's also an island, there's a distinction between, say, for instance, freshwater eels, seawater eels. So if it is a freshwater eel, we call it KAPP. If it is a saltwater eel, it is kasili. And the distinction does not end whether an eel lives in saltwater or freshwater. There's also a distinction in terms of the size. So I'd like to ask whether you have also explored whether there's a distinction with regard to this in Cuyo, because the examples or the presentation, I think, solely focused on sea systems. So that's one of the questions.
Thank you. That's a really good question. Unfortunately, Cuyo Island does not have freshwater ecosystem. We have brackish water. A few parts in the island would have brackish water ecosystem. And yes, we call the the fish caught there as like probably isdang tabang. Isdang tabang. Our term for tabang is the brackish water. Generally, we dislike freshwater fish. So when I get to Manila and I tasted tilapia and bangus for the first time, oh my God, I could not. I'm really sorry. Like, I'm so sorry. Kasi nalalasahan namin yung lupa. That's how we describe it. Nalalasahan namin yung lupa sa meat ng fish. Kaya hindi sa bahay, even I believe with my family, with my one of my brothers here for a long time, hindi kami kumakain ng tilapia at bangus until we tasted the bangus of Dagupan of Pangasinan. So when we tasted it and we realized na, oh my God, pwede palang ganito yung bangus. Walang lasang lupa, walang anything, just, the savory, rich taste of fish. And so even yung mga kapatid ko sa isla, lahat sila ay obsessed with the bangus of Pangasinan. Kasi sa amin, ang bangus is one type of fish that we classify as malak, very elusive. Pag yung nasa dagat na bangus, hindi mo talaga mahuhuli yan. Kaya sobrang rare sa amin yung bangus. Yeah. But because we don't have freshwater ecosystem, wala kaming ganong distinction, but we use isdang tabang generally for fish that are caught in freshwater or brackish water. May mga counterpart kami. May mga sea creatures kasi nakatulad ng, halimbawa yung kanina, yung piya, meron din ganyan kasi sa mountain streams, di ba?
Yes.
So, merong mga similar, and also hito, meron din hito sa dagat. Tapos meron din sila yung mga freshwater. Meron ba? No. Parang wala. Meron? Oh, meron. Good. So, yes, but Cuyo Island is not a freshwater ecosystem.
Yeah. Actually, hindi rin yung tawag sa mga isda. Even yung tawag dun sa mga depende kong mga, what do you call it, Antil, TUBÓG. Because we also use these terms for the things sa river. So we call it yung medyo deep part ng river na kapag nailang tayo ba sa river? But kapag babawasan yung water sa river, lumalabas yung parang tubo, yung parang deep part. Yeah, so may mga ganyung concepts din na na-apply sa freshwater ecosystem as a term. Also, I have another question. This is something to do with myth. Kasi sa Luanes, we have this medical concept of kapulang awen. Para doon siyang, na-mention na dito sa akin nung nag-fieldwork ako, para doon siyang, tinatawag siyang island. It's not actually an island. It's in the middle of the sea. Pero kapag doon pupunta yung mga isda, para doon sila nakakakita ng island. It's kind of medical kasi pag nandun na sila sobrang peaceful, relaxing, parang may nostalgia na mag-feel yung mga pupunta doon. That's why many fishermen would frequent the place. So it's the middle of the sea. Hindi siya island, but people, the tend to want to have a term for that. It's kapulang awen. I think the root is pungaw, which means kapag namimiss mo yung isang tao na napupungaw kasi yung isang tao. So they have the term kapulang awen for that. So my question is, do Cuyonons have medical concepts na related doon sa island linguistics, water ecosystem in general?
Thank you. That's really a good question. Of course, we have one domain of island linguistics. Kaya tumatanong si James kanina. Because one domain of island linguistics are myth or parang collective narratives about the island, or folk tales and legends. And in Cuyo, dalawa yun. Meron sa land. I wrote about this, pero online siya available yung Napuro. That's the island, within an island. So parang siyang enchanted na area na puro mga puno. Kakirapsyonin. Kasi bahagi ng documentation ng Napuro. Another one, sa dagat, ang tawag naman namin ay panyan. Panyan is part of the intertidal system. Malapit actually sa shoreline normally.
na medyo malalim siya, para siyang tubog. Tapos, paggabi, pag pinuntahan mo siya, sobrang matitempt ka na mag-swim kasi makikita mo na sobrang crystal clear ng water, parang sobrang sarap mag-swimming, parang kulay-kulay green yung tubig kahit malapit ka sa lupa, may ganun kalalim, so matitempt kang mag-swimming. But because it's Panyan, it's an enchanted place. So people are discouraged from swimming or getting near that area kasi pwede silang makuha. So we have those kind of things. And there's a domain of island linguistics na pwedeng i-explore yung ganun at mag-create ng hiwalay na questionnaire or lexicon for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sister.
We have time for maybe 2 questions, 2 final questions or comments. Yes, please, and then...
Hello po, magandang hapon. Thank you rin po sa presentation. May tanong lang po, total si ma'am, sabi na yung anak niya ay nasa anthropology, tapos kayo po nandito sa UP. Kasi may mga pag-aaral na rin po na, di ba yung sabi niya yung you're expecting na sana yung island barrier ay ma-preserve yung language. So dito naman po, since nasa Maynila na kayo, paano niya naman din na-preserve siya? I mean, paano niyo siya, tinutulong niyo ba sa anak niyo? Or yun yung mga questions ko lang. I mean, masyadong general yung tanong, pero paano niyo siya keeping alive yung language niyo? Since wala na kayo doon, so paano naman dito?
Thank you. Ano pong pangalan nila, ma'am?
Floor po, Floor.
Ma'am Floor. Maraming salamat.
Kasi, sorry po, share ko lang. Kasi maganda po to kasi meron din po akong yung pinsa ko po nakapag-asawa na Cuyonon, bako sa yung apelido. So even though nasa Canada na sila, yung mga pamangkin ko, nakakapag-speak sila ng Cuyonon kasi tinuturuan sila ng magulang ng asawa ng pinsan ko.
Yeah.
So yun, kaya po ka nandito kasi naintindihan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maraming salamat. Sana po hindi po nasayang ang oras niyo, ma'am. Hindi naman po. Maraming salamat sa tanong. Very interesting question. Una, sana pwede kong gamitin yung Cuyonon sa mga pusa ko, di ba? So may 4 akong pusa. Kaya lang hindi. So ganito, whenever I speak with my brother or sisters nandito sa Metro Manila, Cuyonon yung gamit namin. For the kids, medyo nahirapan silang mag-acquire. They could understand, pero nahirapan silang mag-acquire. Kasi hindi rin nila nagagamit out in the community. You know, a language needs to have a community para mag-evolve siya at mag-flourish. Ngayon, isang ma-share ko lang, even my brother and I, pag magkasama kami, we were traversing sa EDSA, nag-drive siya, sinundo niya ako from UP. Bigla namin na-realize, habang nasa ilalim kami ng MRT or LRT, yung papuntang Monumento from SM North. Bigla kami yung tawanan kasi bigla namin na-realize pa rin na parang ang weird na nagkukuyonon tayo. Tapos yung struktura sa labas, puro ganito. Bakit ganon? Bigla namin na-realize na, why do we have this feeling na parang detached yung kaming dalawa bigla sa surrounding namin habang Cuyonon yung ginagamit namin. So bigla kami nag-shift sa Tagalog kasi parang ang weird sa feeling na Cuyonon. Tapos yung surroundings namin ganon. So, yung point ko dito ay, an island language like Cuyonon, probably all the other smaller languages in the Philippines, are heavily shaped by their ecosystem, by the environment. So, marami sa lexicon yan, marami sa mga words yan, even phrases, even metaphors, even yung idiomatic expressions, marami dyan informed by what you have in your environment. So, kapag wala ka na sa environment na yun, parang ang hirap gamitin. No? So, halimbawa dito, when the first time I came sa Navotas kasi kami nakatira, the first time I came, I was so upset to see na may mga butas-butas sa kalsada, tinatapakan ng basura. Kasi sa isla, pag mayroong butas ng lupa, or mayroong some sort of deformity sa lupa, parang sa amin sign yun na, oops, I'll pay some respect kasi baka may nakatira dyan. Diba? Hindi ka pwede basta-basta magtapon, right? So dito sa Manila, parang amin sa Manila, parang basura everywhere. That's like disrespecting all the parts of your community, di ba?
Parang sa amin, magtapon ka ba ng basura basta-basta sa punong malaki, pwede kang magkaroon ng ng punishment. Kasi disrespect mo yung puno. Yung bato malalaki, lagyan mo ng mga basura, especially plastic. Siguro, gawin mong toilet, okay lang. Oh, magpaalam ka lang. Pero yung lalagyan mo ng basura ang plastic, tatapakan mo ng basura, that's a different thing. So yung point ko ay, we're trying. But somehow, dahil ang Cuyonon is an island language, heavily shaped by its ecosystem and its environment, medyo weird ang feeling kapag ginagamit natin sa Metro Manila. But we, as much as possible, try to use Cuyonon at home. And yes, parents have, power to actually determine kung ano yung aaralin ng anak nila. But a lot of Filipino parents are not doing the right thing, I think. Salamat!
Okay, next question.
Magandang hapon po kanino.
Kuya naman.
Hello po kanino, sir.
Magandang hapon.
Hello po. So, I am Kim po, and Flashi Saling, and I'm born and raised in Cuyo. So, I just want to ask po, kasi nabanggit din po siya kanina ni Ma'am po, like, we are so very detached to our culture, especially din po sa language, kasi me, as someone po that studied until high school sa Cuyo, I really experienced that even sa schools po, the students don't speak Cuyonon anymore. We speak in Tagalog or English kasi nga po, we think, even our parents thinks that, it makes us less globally competitive kapag we speak in our native language po. So, I just want to ask po right now, especially as a linguist, as a linguistic students, the question is, what are the things we can do as the younger generation po of Cuyo to be still in touch with our culture and to keep it alive, especially our language po?
Okay, Kim, matawang salamat. Cuyonon gagaling. Tapos, linguistics yung major?
Opo.
Ay, pwede na ako mag-retire pala.
Darong kabugat po dan.
Ha?
Darong kabugat na responsibility.
Pero kabulan na responsibility. Pwede ko pala ako mag-retire. Tapusin na natin. Mag-retire na ako. Okay. Matamang salamat, Kim. Mambung. Kanak rin na makilala ko dati. Parang medyo bati kong history ka na natin kayo mo. Pero dalita ka lang mga bagat. Yung tanong mo, mahirap, no? Mahirap kasi ang mundo natin, pare-pareho yung gustong ma-achieve. Ang mga kabataan sa mundo, globally, are trying to achieve the same thing. And when you have such phenomenon of singularization, parang nagiging singular yung mga bagay-bagay, iisang kwento yung umiikot, iisang perspective yung maganda, iisang ang pagtingin sa kung ano maganda, ano hindi maganda. Then that threatens diversity, of course. And so, kung gusto mong ma-maintain yung diversity, ma-maintain yung lingwahe na sinasalita sa islang katulad ng Cuyo, dapat unang-una matuto yung kabataan na makita yung kagandahan sa diversity. Na parang okay lang actually na iba-iba tayo. Diba? Okay lang na iba-iba tayo at okay lang na mangarap ng iba sa iba. At okay rin na magsulat, gumawa ng kwento mo para mabasa naman ang mundo at makita nila ng ibang kwento pa. Kasi ang problema ngayon, the kids being taught in schools, they are just being taught mainly translated literature, for example. They're not being given enough opportunity to write their own story. So dapat mabigyan yung mga bata ng pagkakataon na ma-appreciate na, pwede ko palang isulat yung naranasan ko sa enasán kahapon, di ba? I could write about it and people would be amazed na mayroon palang may mga parang garden pala sa dagat. Right? So, pero dahil walang ganun, so yung mga bata, wala, hindi nila nakukwento yung karanasan nila. So, wala silang makita value doon. Kasi they don't even write about it. So, and they don't talk about it anymore then. Di ba? Kasi busy na rin sila sa ibang bagay. So, I think, magsisimula tayo sa basic education, magsisimula sa bahay, kailangan matutunan ng mga kabataan ang value ng diversity at kailangan makita nila na yung lingwahe nila at kultura nila ay pwedeng maging resource na pwedeng maging mahalagang alternative sa dominant na knowledge system. Diba? Hindi naman natin sinasabi na, ay, mali yung Western science. Dapat ipamasma namin sa Cuyo. Hindi naman natin sinasabi gano'n. What we want to say is that maybe there are knowledge systems na baka kailangan talaga natin mamigay kasi sila yung sustainable. If you say the ATÓL earlier, the ATÓL is very sustainable. At sobrang laki ng function niya sa bayan, sa isla. Pero wala nang nagpapatuloy. No? So I think, mali, yung dapat ma-realize ng mga bata that there's value in diversity, dapat maikwento nila yung karanasan nila, dapat yung mga magulang, you have a very supportive community, sa family, sa school, at yung local government, very important. So yung policies ng government, di ba? Kaya di ba kahit sa Cuyo, minsan, minumultahan tayo dati pag pag nag-Cuyo ka sa school, right? Kapag buwan ng wika, bawal mag-Cuyo sa school, dapat taga-Filipino lang. Or baka may school na may English only policy, pag mamultahin ka pa rin. So, yung value system, kailangan ng transformation. The value system, yung education. And it's so good na nandito si Ma'am May Legaspi, which is the regional director of Region 4, tama ba? Chair, right? Region 4. So, she has the authority and the power para mag-initiate ng programs or projects para maumpisahan yung ganitong transformation. So, at this moment, hindi lang kailangan natin ng paradigm shift. Kailangan natin ng transformation. Pwede na mag-retire.
Ang bilis na. Okay, siguro isang tanong na lang. No? Okay.
Hello, Dr. Lee. Congratulations po sa doctor niya. I'm just a linguistics student. Ako naman po is lumaki po ako sa southern part po ng bansa, which is sa Mindanao. Tapos, marunong din po ako ng indigenous language. Such are yung Laan nga po and Tiboli na endangered indigenous language din po sila. Tapos, based nga po sa top po ninyo, yung Cuyonon language nga po talaga is nagpa-varies po siya dun sa environment po ninyo kung ano po yung proper na to address things on the environment, such as dun nga din po sa Laan po na ginagamit ko sa linggo. And furthermore po, yung may thought ko lang po talaga dito, yung nahook po ako kanina sa word na TUBÓG. Yung TUBÓG po kasi sa inyo is vegetation on the parang
Tide pool. Yung hindi natutuyuan ng dagat.
Yeah, yes.
Laging may dagat.
I just wanted, kasi po sa Laan po kasi, yung TUBÓG pusher is pwede po siyang ilamuyan po ng mga tao and ng mga animals, and also money po kasi siya. So, my question is, nag-varies din po ba kapag sasabihin po natin pwede po siyang lamuyan ng tao and ng animals? Nagbabago din po ba kung paano po natin i-address yung certain word po din? Halimbawa po na tubog po siya, nagiging tubog. Parang ganun ba?
You mean nagbabago yung form sa Laan?
Sa Cuyonon po.
Sa Cuyonon, hindi naman nagbabago yung form. But tubog, yung tubog sa dagat, pwede naman siyang lamuyan ng tao. Pwede rin lamuyan ng hayop. And normally may muddy part. Yes. Normally may muddy part. But it's still tubog. Importante yung tubog kasi, halimbawa, I'll give you an example. Yung thatch roof sa Cuyo, yung roof na gawa sa dahon ng nyug, pawid. Yung pawid, para sa maging matibay, bago mo siya maikabit, dapat itutubog mo muna siya ng matagal sa dagat. So, ipiano muna doon. Ilalagay muna doon, lalagay ng bato para yung sa umangat ng mga ilang weeks para tumibay yung pawid. Ang tawag namin doon, yung verb, sa ibababad sa dagat ng matagal. So, maraming purpose yung tubog actually, and I think pwede ma-expand pa yung vocabulary. Pero, I'm curious lang kasi baka yung tubog sa inyo ay sa dagat ba? Or sa ilog? Sa dagat din. So may intertidal system din sa inyo. Okay, yeah. So, yes, tama naman. Pwedeng ngamuyan ng tao, pwedeng ngamuyan ng hayop, may muddy part. Yes. Basta hindi natutuyuan. At malapit sa shoreline. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, another round of applause for Sir Aldrin. And for all of the audience members who asked thought-provoking questions and gave their comments. So once again, many thanks, sir, for engaging us and sharing knowledge on Cuyonon and its intertidal lecture. And that has been our October installment of the Philippine Indigenous Languages Lecture Series. For those who are watching this recording at a later date, many thanks to you as well. Stay tuned for more events and activities by our department. So meron na lang po tayong dalawang natitirang PILS installment. Stay tuned for the November installment, which will be on Filipino modals in communicating disaster-related risks by Professor Mary Ann G. Bakulód. And our final PILS installment in December will be given by Sir Tuting Hernandez. It's going to be on the supposed quote-unquote angry register of the Bicol languages. Alright? So, abangan po natin yan. And maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo. Have a nice day.